Hi everyone, and welcome to Tapping Your Creativity in my studio today. I am so excited to welcome in our guest, my guest artist, Robert Mars. He is an incredible, talented, amazing artist who his work is actually joining us right now, and he's going to tell us all about his amazing and talented work that he does.
Hey,
Hey, Robert, welcome.
how's it going?
Can you hear me okay? Okay, good.
Wait, I can't hear you.
I feel like,
No,
can you hear me okay? Okay.
yeah,
Welcome, Robert. How are you?
good. How you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really happy that you're joining us today here because you're not only one of, I guess, my first pop artist, but you are more than that. You are a recorder of history. You're fascinated with the art that came in the 1950s and 60s. And your knowledge of that time and your history that you have that connection through that time comes incredibly well through your work. And so tell us who you are, where do you work, and anything that you want to tell us about yourself right now.
So I'm Robert Mars, and I currently live in Connecticut, Lower Fairfield County, so about 50 miles north of Manhattan. But it's a very different world than Manhattan, very
Very,
rural.
yeah.
And during this whole time, like I've just been sort of focusing on really what art means to me and kind of trying to digest everything going on and sort of work with it in my brain and then put it out onto canvas or panel.
So tell me a little bit about your background and where did you go to school and how did your art career started?
So I guess the first thing is that I've always been an artist. My parents have given me tons of drawings over the years that I did from when I was 4, 6, 10, 12. So it's something that's always been there. And a lot of it just sort of was me looking at the world. So as a kid in the 70s, the things that were popular to me and the things that I focused on were really BMX riding. I always rode a BMX bike on the weekends, so that was part of it. I played baseball as well, so that, the Yankees became a part of what I was drawing. Custom vans and hot rods, which was a real 70s thing.
Yeah.
Motorcycles and hockey, the Rangers. So that was kind of where that all started for me. And so I guess I've always kind of been looking at the world around me and trying to see what my story is. And so when I really started focusing on art was around the late 90s. So I was working in graphic design and illustration. I was working in skateboarding out in Los Angeles. And I felt like I really loved doing that because skateboarding was such an integral part of my life for 25 years.
Yeah.
But I wanted a voice that was my own. And so at that point, I left skateboarding, got a corporate job, which was really just a 9 to 5.
I
All my
can't
jobs
believe
were
you did
always
that.
free.
I can't even imagine you in that world.
I know. Well, it was for Adidas, right? So it wasn't really corporate. You could still wear sneakers to work and ride your bike to work.
Okay. I'll give you that.
But it was a corporate structure, and I focused on painting at night. I stopped skateboarding for a while and really just tried to find my voice, my visual language that I wanted to work with. And around 2001, 2002 is when I really started showing in galleries. And it wasn't until the mid 2000s, so 2005 or 6, where galleries started representing me on a full-time basis, not just
Okay.
having you in their roster and giving you a show once a year or once every 2 years, but actually having your work on the wall all the time. And that was really the big turning point for my career, because suddenly I had a second income stream from making
Right.
art that was monthly. Um,
Right.
and it sort of it sort of really shifted from there. And then around 2011, I left my last job. I was a creative director for New York Skateboards, and painting had been just doing so well. I had been getting checks every single month that were bigger than what I was making at my day job. And my day job sort of shifted. Like, I was a creative director, but yet I spent most of my time dealing with factories in Asia. And it just wasn't rewarding. And all day long, all I would think about was getting to my studio and making art.
Yeah.
And so that was really kind of the big shift.
So this is because you went to Parsons School of Fashion and Design, right? That's where you went there. So so you were in New York first, and then you moved to LA, and this is when it all happened?
Yes. So I grew up in New Jersey, about same distance, about 50 miles outside the city. So as a teenager, my dad worked in the city, and so I would go in with him, and I would bring my skateboard and go skateboarding all day. And so New York was always in my calling. Like, I loved it, the energy of that place, the danger of it. In the 80s, it was magical. So I started at FVA, and then after the foundation year, the first year, I went to Parsons. And, really, college was really where I was exposed to so much different art. Prior to that, it was really, the things that I was focusing on was like punk rock, heavy metal graphics, skateboarding graphics. It was very much in that sort of realm. But then going to college and finding my first hero, which was Robert Rauschenberg, that was eye-opening, to see his work in a museum and realize that not everything had to be polished, not everything had to be a realistic painting. What he was doing, he was speaking about emotion, right? So he was sort of taking the best parts of abstract expressionism and the best parts of pop art and sort of smashing them together. And it really just made me think in a whole different.
Robert? Oh, I don't know why it's you're coming in and out. Tell me again the last part that you said. Yeah.
Just realizing that Robert Rauschenberg, he sort of opened my eyes to the fact that art didn't have to be a certain way. In museums, everything was very polished, and he was different. Essentially, he was taking trash and putting it onto canvas and making it into art. And I thought that was really a different approach.
Right. I think that, for you to be at that time in New York and having all this street art photography and art and everything that was happening at that time, and being in an environment of Parsons, it really opened you up to all the opportunities that maybe you never thought that you could dream of in your head, that you could actually go into action and perform them.
Yeah, and I felt like, so foundation year is where you sort of do everything, right? You have drawing classes, painting classes, sculpture. They're just introducing you to all the things you can do. And then the second year you pick a major. And I didn't want to pick fine art because of the taboo that you'll always be broke. And so I picked illustration and graphic design because illustration to me was the closest thing to fine art that you could do. And that was great. And that really launched me into all the jobs that I ever had. And like I said, they've always been creative. So when I left Parsons, I got a job in advertising. And then from there, I went directly into skateboarding. And skateboarding was really the thing where I realized you can do illustration and graphic design and mesh these two things together and put them on my favorite thing at the time, which was skateboards. And
for sure. I mean, it gave you that opportunity to like really experiment with things that maybe you never thought that you could. And this gave you a very different venue and maybe a different traction with people that you didn't have before. And so that your creative juices came in a very different way.
Yeah.
So,
but again, like it's as an artist, and I guess the one thing that I really learned from having day jobs and being creative director and being graphic designer, senior graphic designer, is that you're responsible for your own push.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best things that I ever learned in having a day job was when I sit here in my studio, There's no one telling me, no one's behind my shoulder going, let's move that a little to the left, a little to the right,
Yeah.
So all of that is on me, and it's a lot of pressure,
Yes.
but it's doing something that I love. So I'm always inspired to come into my studio and go, how can I push it today? Like, can I use a different color? What kind of different composition can I use? And during this whole time, I've been doing abstract work during the COVID virus.
Right.
And that's been really interesting because there is no, there's no figurative, there's no graphic design, there's none of that in there. It's all just based on color, and brushstroke. And so that's been a huge learning experience.
Yeah, it's like everything in a work of art, I think, is a choice, right? And so you are making a very structural choice. I think that the way that you approach your paintings are almost like if it were a floor plan of some sort, of like an architectural floor plan. And then you're building your surfaces from there, and you're building a very sensual surface because of the subject matter that you use. And so I think that the way that you are now creating some abstract work, that it's coming from that, almost like it is a choice, but it's also so second skin to you now that it's coming
Right.
out of your porises. And so, you're still very much infatuated with the artists or the famous people, because I think that's your majority of the work that you do. But now that I see that you are pushing yourself in a different way, that you're going to show us later on how you're doing your abstract work, which that takes me actually into talking about going back to 2014 and the influences that you had from modern quilting and how your wife came into play. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that became really my signature. So in the early 2000s, I was traveling a lot with Adidas and doing a lot of road trips around America. So naturally, the work, although it was based in America, it was really rooted in sort of what's left over from the 50s and 60s. So the neon signs, the old cars, all of this, like the patina on the metal, all of it really just spoke to me. I
Yes.
liked that there was a built-in history. There was weathering on all of this, and that was important to me. And so going forward, like I wanted to emulate that. And then, then I started bringing in like American flag themes as the background, things relating to pop art in the 50s and 60s, the targets of Jasper Johns, the camouflage of Andy Warhol. And then at some point I realized like this is not progressing. This is just staying stagnant. And I sort of started searching around and saying, what direction can I move in? What makes sense? Because you go out there and you look at different artists and you get inspired by them, but it's not necessarily correct for what you're doing. And so what I didn't even realize is it was right in front of my face the whole time. So my wife is a contemporary, she's a modern quilter. As one of her, it's kind of at this point, it's become another job. And so as part of that, she has this whole reference library of books. And one day I was looking, and there was one out on the coffee table, and it was this red and white quilt book. And there was something about the cover that struck me, like that can really be utilized in a different way.
Yeah.
And taken out of a folk art context and put into pop art, and so at that was a shift. And it's something that really interests me. Like I love looking back at it. It's got a deep you look at the work that's put into these quilts, it's thousands of hours. These are labors of love.
It's
And
really truly it's labor of love. Yes.
And these things so we got several for the kid. Our friends made them for our kids when they were born, and my wife has done the same for us. Traditional thing, and it becomes something that just is an heirloom, And you don't have a lot of heirlooms today. Things are so easily discarded that to have something that you'll never get rid of is a huge, it's just a huge sign.
Well, and I think the way that you approach your paintings and how you, are keeping history alive by going back to magazines, and we'll talk about that later. But, you and I talked about, how important it is to still have books and still go back to what it's tangible and not necessarily, going live or, using your electronics, but really digging into history and going back to it and bringing the golden age of America back to life. And so I think that you are on point with your artwork, transmitting that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the one thing that so much of it has to do with research, right? I was born in 1969, so I missed the 50s and 60s completely. So for me, this was a thing that was magic. I lived through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So, you have your own, you build your own memories of it. But I had no memories prior to that. So, doing all the research and looking at magazines and really getting a feel for what was iconic at that time. And some of it's, a no-brainer, right? Like a Marilyn and
Right.
Audrey, things like that. But there's plenty of other things that are iconic in their own little way. And
Yeah.
that becomes part of that story.
So, Robert, has COVID and George Floyd and all this has it affected your work? Have you shifted a little bit? How are you working with all this?
Yeah, I think right now we're at a huge changing point in the world. Um, we entered 2020 and all of a sudden everything fell apart. So I think that took a lot of introspection to say, I have to keep things going. Children. And so me and
Yes.
my wife have to sort of navigate through this and keep them not, out of being anxious.
There you go. You were frozen
Did
there
I
for a
just break
minute.
up?
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah. So, um, trying to just navigate that on our own. But then I think that coming into the studio, it it's about spending that time positively.
Yeah, I
Are you
think
there?
like yeah, I'm here. I don't know why it's coming in and out, but we can still hear you well. I think that, it's a time to
Okay.
can you hear me, Robert? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that right now it's a time to really listen, to learn, to go introspective in ourselves, in our artwork, and just really open our minds to change and a well-deserved change that needs this world to be a better place for all of us.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah, yeah. And
I
I
think the
know that you have, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say I think the one thing that growing up and listening to punk rock and being a part of that scene, we became very politically aware of the discrepancies in life, the haves and the have-nots. And these are people who are, these are people who are economists. These are people who are political scientists. These are people who understand the world and how it works. And so I've always been aware of the fact of white privilege. It wasn't called that, but this is what it was. Um, and it's just kind of interesting to see things going into the mainstream. It's really good because it means that more people are aware of it.
Yes, for sure. 100%. And I think, like I've said before in past episodes, I think we'll look back in a few years and go back and see how every artist was impacted by 2020. And I
Yeah.
think it will be very interesting, and it will be, for our children now to look back and see this year as a turning point for the good and for the better.
Yeah.
God willing. So let's talk about your artwork. If you want to take us a little tour of your studio there, and you want to show us around.
I don't know what's with the connection. It's a little bit weird right now.
Yeah, you're
Like,
there.
I don't see it all.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, good.
I don't know.
So this is kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
So this is the end of a commission that I'm finishing up. This is pretty much the traditional work that I've been doing for the past bunch of years. And so
Can you
we were
show us
talking
closer in a little bit?
Yeah, so there's details, right? There's specific details like the DB5, which was Bond's car, his Walther PPK. So there's a couple of things that relate directly to him. And there's some that are just sort of tell the story, like the woman who could be a Bond girl but is. You know, so there's a lot of small details in here.
Yeah, wow. It has a lot of layers, Robert.
A lot of this is an old 007 cologne. So, you know, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll go through, as I have so many magazines, and I will cut things apart and put them into piles, knowing that I'm not going to use it right now, but when I need it, I know where it is. And that was one of those pieces.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing.
And then we were talking about kind of where I'm headed. So these are the pieces, you know, these are the abstract. You know what, let me go over here because there's actually not too much light on that. So, you know, these abstract pieces that are all based in quilt patterns.
Yeah, you can totally see that. Can you come in a little closer, Robert? So we can see the texture?
Yeah, so you can see for the texture, you know, they're all done with vintage newspaper. And so the way that I do this in my brain is that I paint layers, you know, chaotically, which is sort of the world. And then I cut them very accurately and I put them back together. And it's kind of my way of saying, I'm releasing this to the world through the paint, and then I'm taking it back and sort of controlling it. So I guess that's the one big thing during this time is just we don't have control, you know? And
So are you 100%? I mean, I think that the way that you're approaching it is fabulous because it almost, I mean, I think you're putting it back as a puzzle, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, you know. And then I even have works that are sort of the cross section of it, right? So it deals with the background being similar to that, but then it has an actual icon on it.
Right. And do you find that process cathartic, something that you like are really is very different for you, the way that you're approaching the puzzle? Because we're all in a puzzle right now and it's hard to fit it all together and it's hard to put all the parts together. So is it a way for you to heal yourself in a way by doing that and seeing all the pieces working together?
Yeah, it's totally therapy. You know, it's letting go of something and then taking it back and accepting it as it is, right? Because essentially I'm taking something and making it, then I'm destroying it, and then I'm recreating it. So it's kind of like, you know.
Yeah. It's a deconstruction to construct.
Right. You know, and I think that that's important, you know, and you know, there's plenty of different patterns to work with. You know, this is actually mostly made up of triangles, like, you know, 3 different shapes, and then seeing how you can rearrange them all to make something new.
Is that on paper or on canvas?
This is on panel.
Oh, it's on panel. So that's not a puzzle like the one that you did before. You didn't cut
No,
that.
it is. So it's the same way. It's done on paper, and then but it's
Oh, it
the
is. Okay.
structure that it's on. Yeah.
Okay, and then you use matte
So
medium to put it on the board, I assume.
yes, use
Okay,
golden gel, gloss gel,
okay, okay.
and and then in the end, what I do is I put a satin varnish on it, which kind of transforms it because it has the look of what's it called? Jasper Johns.
Yeah, I actually love the work that you're going that you're moving into that direction. I think it feels very modern, yet it has so much history behind it. And like I said, we're in a world that can you hear me okay, Robert? Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Robert? Okay. I was saying
I can hear
like
you.
we are in
Yeah,
a
I'm here.
time right now where we are deconstructing things like you are in order to put them together in a better way. And our world is that. And I think that you're working in that way. And I really understand now much more about your work and your background and how you're putting all this together. I mean, it makes so much sense. Um,
Thanks.
and so
And there
where
is
do you
history
get,
built into
yeah, go ahead.
so there is history built into it with all of the newspapers. You know, it's using something that's old, it's using something that has a history. You can see little parts of it that sort of creep out, and I think that that's important too. You know, using history to
Yes,
talk about history.
for sure. Oh my God, 100%. What kind of paper do you use to paint on before you glue it on the panel?
The paper is it's all just vintage newspaper or vintage magazines. So I have tons and tons of that stuff. Actually, we can, it won't cut out, but we can enter the studio and there's just
Wow, all that is storage?
tons and tons of stuff. Um, tons no reception there. Can you hear
It's
me?
okay. Um, yeah, I can hear you. Where are your live magazines? Where do you keep those?
So I have bins and bins of them. So, you know, these are all ones from looks like 40s, 40s and 50s.
Okay.
So this was interesting. Like I actually had gotten someone was selling an entire collection on eBay years ago, and it was like less than $1 an issue. But you have in Detroit, and so
Oh
I
my
did.
gosh.
Yeah,
You drove there?
I drove there and back
I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on
because it
with
wasn't
the sound, but he'll be back.
fun.
There we go. Okay. Say that again, because so tell us about your story once you're done with putting the phone back. Um, I think that I don't know why the audio is coming in and out, but
It
I
was,
hope that you can hear me.
I can hear. So it
Okay, so
was
tell us the
on
story about
eBay.
Detroit.
It was a kind. Yeah, so he was a bookseller, and he had one family's entire collection of Life magazines from 1940 to 1970. So it was 1,200 issues. Um, and he didn't want to break it up. He wanted to sell it as a whole. And I said to him, like, I'm interested. And I bid on it and won and drove there and back in like a day and a half.
Oh my God, you hit the jackpot.
Yeah, you know, and I've
Literally.
had that. Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, I already have thousands. Like I have, you know, shelves of National Geographics and Popular Mechanics, Life, Look, Saturday Evening Post. Like it's just there's something so fascinating about it. And you know, one thing that's kind of interesting is that the more I look back, the more I realize nothing's changed. You know, it's still the same thing. It's still the worry about the economy. It's still, you know, there's still racism. There's still oppression. Um, you know, it becomes, it just takes on a different form.
It does. It does. And but I'm really hopeful. That's the last thing that should ever go, you know. Hope is the one thing that we have that we should always keep in our hearts and our minds. And if we are better persons ourselves, then we teach our friends, our kids,
Yeah.
you know, our surroundings, our community to be better with each other and to respect each other and to go forward in a way that, you know, hopefully we can find that middle ground.
Yeah, I think the youth of today are really sort of on top of this. They're politically motivated, they're charged, they want a better, willing to fight for it.
Yeah, we all want that. We all want a better future. I wanted to ask you, Robert, how did you get your work pretty much all over the world? Tell us a little bit about where you represented and how you did that.
Um, I don't even know the amount of galleries I'm in right now. I'm in a couple of international galleries and then galleries all over the United States. I think I'm a little bit too spread out right now, so I want to pull back. Um, but it just was really building up and contacting galleries and not hearing back and hearing back from some.
Sorry, guys. I don't know. This is what happens on the live, right? We just roll with it. So bear with us because when he can hear me, then he's great. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I'm here. Okay, so tell me about your gallery process.
So, you know, it really, what happens is start working with one gallery. Like years ago, I started working with DTR Modern in New York, and they have their roster of artists, and one of their artists will show at a gallery on the West Coast. And so that gallery will also pick you up as an artist because they know that your work sells well and goes together with this other artist. So a bunch of it has happened in that way. And then I started looking for galleries that weren't necessarily pop art galleries because I felt like my work wasn't just pop art, like it did have other things going on. And so I started contacting other galleries that had programs that had abstract work, sculpture, you know, plein air painting, just different things. And a couple of those galleries have been really successful for me. Something different, I'm there.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just coming like a late signal. Okay, try and reconnect. So I'll stay on. Yeah, try and reconnect. I'll stay on and then reconnect.
Okay.
Just ask me again. Yeah, there we go. So, so just a recap of everything. Robert Mars is an incredible historian of pop art. He is fascinated by lines and marks and quilting, modern abstract quilting. And his way of approaching it is incredible. He deconstructs paper and then he puts it together on a wood panel as a puzzle. And so hopefully he will be joining us back soon here anytime so he can finish telling us all about himself. But I'm just going to tell you that right now Robert's artwork is exhibited worldwide, including museums, corporate and private collections in Munich, Tokyo, Amsterdam, London, Boston, New York, Los Angeles, Laguna Beach, Paris, Aspen, and Los Angeles. So, I mean, just to name a few of his places that you can find him. And this has been an incredible interview. If he doesn't join me in a couple of minutes here, I think I will finish it up, and I will tell you all about his story on my feed. And anyways, I can read a little more about you while we give Robert a few minutes to come back in, and hopefully he can join us again. He merges his own concept of personal idols with those of mainstream culture. So he is able to focus his work on a deeper analysis of a golden age of Americana. His early work focuses on many of the architectural and mechanical forms of the 50s and 60s, were muscle cars, motels, kitschy logos, and what they would call the modern feeling of the time. They reign supreme. Now, Mars' artwork has shifted towards a culture of celebrity, as he is strikingly attuned to the fact that this instantly are recognizer and are larger than life works. So hopefully, okay. Let me see if I can request. Let me see. Okay. I think he's coming in now. I hope.
Okay.
Are you there? Oh my goodness.
Whoops.
Whoops.
All right, I'm there. Are you?
This is very chaotic, people. Stay with us.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
I got to go do some art.
Listen, I just gave a whole monologue about you. So I mean, I was reading from your bio. So I hope I did justice of who you are. But
Superman.
this is what happens on live TV. The show must go on no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And we have to make light of it.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
so if you want to just go back and just tell us real quick the gallery portion of it, how you started that, and I know that you said that you're spread out thinly right now because you're in too many places. I think it's important to pull back for the value of your work, as well as for how many pieces you can produce in a year, you know. I mean, I don't know if you have a limit or if you say I'm going to produce this amount of pieces.
I think I just make work. I'm always making work. And then I try to figure out kind of like where it fits best. You know, one thing that Rob Zott said in his interview is that it's really important to not just have galleries, but have ones that want to push your career ahead, ones that have a long-term goal for you. And I think that that's crucial. Anyone can hang your art on a wall. Most of us as artists do a lot of our own PR anyway. So our name is out there. And if people want to come buy the work, they will. But I think it really takes a great gallery to have monthly meetings with their artists and sit down and say, hey, what's next? You know, what are you working on? Where are you headed? This isn't working for the gallery. This is, let's push in this direction, you know, just to have a strategy going forward.
Yeah, I think it's so important for artists to do their due diligence if that gallery will work for them as well. Because like you said, they want you, they're representing you. And if you can't represent yourself, then you need the better half that is going to. And that partnership is your better half.
Right. You know, I definitely agree with that. And I've seen the difference, you know, just in walking into galleries. There's been times where I've walked into a gallery and you get the like nothing, right? There's no enthusiasm. And then sometimes you'll walk in and, you know, the director or salesperson will be there and you'll say, oh, tell me a little bit, you know, tell me a little about the artist if it's someone that I don't know. And sometimes you can hear it in their voice and you can feel the love of the work that this person's making. And sometimes that changes it
Yeah.
for you, you know, and suddenly you're looking, oh, I just walked in here and saw paintings on the wall, but now like I understand what they're about. I understand that this person has a voice that's important and they're making beautiful work. And, you know, I think that's the difference.
So you started approaching galleries and then all of a sudden they started approaching you?
Yeah, so you know, when I really started showing, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and so you know, it wasn't the New York art scene, and so I think that that gave me a leg up because I was showing in really cool galleries in Portland and selling work for, you know, $500, $600. Um, but that was the beginning of it. You know, I don't know what it would have been like if I lived in New York. I don't know if I would have had that same experience because it's just a tougher
Right.
market. So by the time 2004, 2005 rolled around and I was going to move back to New York to pursue art, I already had a solid CV of galleries that I'd shown in, you know, some international. So it was easier to step back into New York and say, hey, look, like I'm not new at this. I've been doing this. I have a track record, you know, and being able to speak about your work,
Yeah, it's so
you
important
know,
to know how to
in
talk
just
about
a
your work.
very small amount. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I started, you know, I got a break with the gallery in Chelsea, and that was 2005. And it was a bad deal for me, but it was a stair, you know, and I stepped up that stair and went to the next thing. And when things fell apart with that gallery, I ended up signing to a gallery in Boston that was Kidder Smith, and it was Tom Smith, and he was a great gallerist. He had a great eye. The gallery was beautiful, and then 2008 came around, and it just became too hard to run a business, and so he stepped away from it. But you know, everything that happens, good or bad, I feel like the outcome is positive in the end because even the people that do you wrong, like they're teaching you something. They're teaching you what you need to look out
Yeah,
for,
what you don't
you
want, what
know,
you don't
and
need.
most of my experiences, right, and most of my experiences have been really positive in the art world.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I
So,
mean, yeah.
and I'm living, yeah,
And you know, and you're working hard.
you know, I'm
Like
able
I
to live
said,
in,
nothing comes for free. You work really hard at it, and you know, every
yeah,
artist that is a professional artist works as hard in this profession or harder than any other profession. Because like you said, we are the ones that are promoting our own work. And yes, we do have galleries that help us do that, but if you don't have the discipline to show up every day at your studio and create, no one will do that for you.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. You become your own boss,
Yes, yes, you do. You sure
you
do.
know.
Well, Robert, thank you so much. I'm sorry, guys, for
Yeah,
all the noise situation, but like I said, live TV
yeah,
sometimes works its own way. We have no control over it.
yeah.
Um, I will put on my feed all of Robert's materials and his bio so you can learn more about him and his work. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Robert is happy to answer them. I have turned off the comments because we were looking at your work, but I'm putting them back on. And if you have any
Yeah.
questions, I'm sure that Robert or myself, we can always answer those questions for you. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for letting us into your studio, which is fascinating, and I
Of
love
course.
everything about it. And see you
Thank you.
all on Saturday. We have Nancy Haley's coming up, and so I'm super excited for that. Thanks, Robert. Take
Thank
care.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.